Welcome to Sustained and Sustainable. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to cut and prep a whole chicken. The reason why I started doing this was so that I could start feeding my family organic and air-chilled chicken at an affordable cost. However, whether you're cutting up organic air-chilled or whether you're cutting up regular chicken, you will still be saving 4 to 5 times the amount that you spend on pre-packaged chicken. So to start, you're going to pull out the insides. Sometimes they're in a bag, sometimes they're just placed inside. I personally like to use my chicken bones to make bone broth, and so I'm gonna go ahead and take the chicken neck and put it here in my Instant Pot so I can make bone broth later. I also like to feed the kidneys to my dogs. It's a great way for them to get some good protein, and it's not something that I'm going to use. Okay, let's get started. So first we're going to start with the chicken leg. You can kind of see that there's some fatty skin right here where the leg kind of pulls apart. You're going to start cutting at this leg. You're going to get to a point where you start to see this separation between the leg and the chicken here. If there's any excess skin on the sides, go ahead and cut that so you can get down to the bone. All right, you're gonna feel right here, there's a bone going down this chicken thigh. You're going to feel it and start to push it up until the bone pops out right here. So now that the bone is popped out, it should be easy to chop through your chicken. If it does get a little bit tough, that's where I like to use these scissors to help cut through any skin or cut through any meat that is a little tricky to get to with my knife. All right, so now here you've got a chicken thigh and your chicken leg. When you're looking at the chicken thigh and leg, you will see there's a fat line running down here. This is where you're gonna want to cut. You can actually, when you put your finger in, you can feel that there's a joint, and cutting in between that joint will help make it easier to cut through, so you're not cutting through a lot of bones. If you've got any skin that's a little bit tricky to get through, again, you can use your scissors. All right, so now we have a chicken leg, which I'm going to go ahead and put in my container, and a chicken thigh. All right, normally I would repeat the same thing on the other side, but since you've already seen that, I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the wing. So you're going to pull up the wing and just start cutting around the base until you find the end of the bone. I usually like to throw my chicken wings in a freezer bag with some Frank's hot sauce and use that along with my recipe for homemade pizza. So we've got a pizza and wings night. For the chicken legs, I love to throw those in with some barbecue sauce. Just throw them in a freezer bag, let it marinate, or throw it in a container, let it marinate, and then I can pull that out on a weekend to grill. Okay, so now that we've got our chicken wing, you're gonna go ahead and cut out this triangle of skin. And then we're going to cut off this tip of the wing, which we will not be using. Again, feel in between the bones to try to find the joint so you can figure out where to cut without having to cut through too many bones. Same thing here. These are our 2 parts of the chicken wing. We're gonna feel for the joint in between and cut that in half. Okay, you're gonna repeat that on the other side, cutting up this chicken wing, and go ahead and put it in your container. All right, now we've got the middle of the chicken left. We've got our chicken breasts and tenders, and then we've also got the ribs and spine, which we're going to use for bone broth. I'm going to create a whole separate video for the recipe that I use for bone broth. We're gonna go ahead and look for another fat line. There is a fat line right here, and you're going to take your scissors and cut through it. You are going to need to cut through some ribs. Go ahead, keep cutting until you can, until you get to a point where the spine can pull away. You're gonna go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. Look for that fat line and cut across. Okay, then you're gonna go ahead and pull apart this spine from the top of the chicken. I'm gonna cut the skin. All right, this is great for bone broth, and I love too that I'm not wasting pieces of the chicken. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw that in my pot right here to make some bone broth later. All right, so now we've got our chicken breasts, and you can see here that there is a bone, and there is a really hard V-shaped piece up here at the top. Right in between, you're going to go ahead, and you don't need to cut all the way through. Just put a little bit of a knot in between so that it can separate. You're gonna flip over your chicken breast and push down until you hear it pop a little bit, and those are the pieces separating, all right? I personally don't like to keep the chicken skin on top of my chicken breast, so I'm gonna go ahead and cut that off and throw it away. Okay, so now we've got our chicken breasts right down the middle. You can feel this line. You're going to go ahead and start cutting down, and then to the side as you feel the bones. This is going to start separating your chicken breast and the chicken tender from the bones. You can kind of start to see it coming apart here. We've got our chicken tender down here and our chicken breast up here. And so you're just gonna start cutting a little bit diagonally, as close to the bone as you can get so that you can have as much chicken as possible in that chicken tender and the chicken breast. You can see here how it's starting to separate. So here we've got our chicken tender, and that should just pull right off. And we've got our chicken breast, which I will throw into a container. Sometimes I like to chop these up and pre-season it so it's ready for a recipe. It just depends on what you want to do. I'm gonna put this chicken breast in my prep container. All right, we're gonna go ahead and repeat that on the other side. We've got the chicken breast cut off on this side, and we're gonna go ahead and feel for that bone there and cut down and then diagonally out as close to the bone as possible to keep the chicken tender and the chicken breast intact. This part of the chicken is leftover, mostly bone. I'm also going to throw that into my pot here so that I can make bone broth later. I hope that that was helpful. I'm going to share my recipes, but essentially, depending on how many chickens you cut up, we usually do 6, so we end up having 12 chicken legs to do barbecue chicken legs, 12 chicken thighs. We do crispy chicken thighs every month, chicken tenders for chicken tenders and spaghetti. The chicken breasts I use in soup, I use in pad thai. I make so many recipes with all the chicken breasts. I hope that this is super helpful for you. I definitely enjoy prepping my 6 chickens a month. That way I have freezer meals ready to go, but I can also filter the types of ingredients and things coming into my home. I also love that I get to use the chicken scraps to make a bunch of bone broth, which I use in soups and pastas, and then even drink when I'm feeling sick. So I'm going to share that recipe with you next for the bone broth, and let me know if you have any questions.